Hold on. It's it's official like a referee's whistle. And this is Greg Hoyt. This is Greg Hoyt from the breakdown. Doing my new independent thing, devoid of Red Voice Media and what have you. So I want to thank anybody and everybody who decided to join in live. If you catch this after the fact, I would still highly recommend you tune in because this is going to be an interesting conversation, and dare I say, controversial. So if you're of the ilk where you're perhaps easily offended or you are not open to having ideas challenged, maybe this ain't it for you.
No.
But I I would highly recommend you tune in because I'm joined by the awesome Casey Benefield, aka from Better Benefield. He is an AM radio host personality. He has his channel Better Benefield here on YouTube. Uh, and he is the type of person that maybe people who follow me exclusively would think that I may not be in cahoots with based upon his perspective on certain things. Because many who follow me, they know that, I sometimes get accused of being a MAGA, and then I have to correct people. I'm like, listen, I'm not MAGA. I'm far right.
Yeah,
And-
yeah. But I mean, and I get that. You know, it's the same on our side. Like a lot of our after our first conversation when we discussed reparations, a lot of people were questioning like how would you even know somebody like Gregory Hoyt? And most when I tell them, I said we've been friends for almost 13 years now. So this isn't some fly by night friendship. Like this is my brother. So having different ideology doesn't disqualify you from being a friend.
exactly. And when I try to explain it to people, like when it comes to ideology, if it's authentic ideology, what it boils down to is you have two factions that are both trying to make a cake, but
Correct.
either side has a different recipe that they swear by. You know, nobody wants to be told that they have an ugly baby. Do ugly babies exist? Yes, they do.
Of course
But
they exist. They become ugly adults.
but nobody wants to be told that
No,
they have
no.
an ugly baby. And you've seen them.
Facts. Yeah, yeah. I know. Listen, not only do people not want to be told they have ugly baby, but you can go deeper. Uh, you've seen children interact with other children, and you say, "Hey, that child there is really smart." So, in essence, what are you saying about the other child? Nobody wants to have an ugly baby, and nobody wants to have a dumb baby, but they exist. Those are
Oh,
facts.
well, yeah, there's always the dumb baby where, like, where it's instances where you can tell a child, "Don't touch the stove." You'll
Facts.
and there's always going to be that one kid that you tell them so many times, and then you just get to a point where you're like, "Fuck it, burn your hand."
Well, listen, the smart child burns himself once. The dumb child burns himself twice. So
Uh, so there were a few things I wanted to discuss with you. To let the cat out of the bag for those who may be watching either now or after the fact. Casey and I, we did like converse briefly on the phone earlier, so we did bring up a couple of topics that I thought were interesting. But one thing that I found interesting that it transpired a couple of days ago, and I wanted to hear your thoughts on it because I had a friend of mine that does not believe in presidential elections. He believes in presidential selections. He thinks everything is kind of predetermined. But Biden, he was on stage a couple of days ago, and he said something. I took it as like he doesn't have a lot of confidence in his party, and maybe it was perhaps one of his gaffes. But some people are looking at it saying like, "Oh, it's a foretelling of the election." He said on stage uh, when referencing former President Trump, he said, that he had an argument with the former president, and then he takes a breath and he goes, "And possibly the future president." So when he's saying former president, possibly the future president, I was looking at that and I'm thinking, maybe he's just signaling that he doesn't have a lot of faith in the party, in the Democratic Party right now, which I can understand that. You know, each party is experiencing significant flaws, as they
Absolutely.
always do. Every election cycle, Democrats and Republicans they have their fair share of flaws, and it really boils down to what does the greater population feel is the most pressing issue at the time, and that's where you see who rises to the top, who gets elected. Is it the Democrat or the Republican? Uh, but there's I saw one friend of mine, and I also see that notion resounding elsewhere where people are saying this is the signal of a presidential selection, not election. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think it really is that tainted? Where
Well, I mean, okay, so this question, we it's funny you were speaking to one of your friends about it, 'cause I was speaking to a couple of people about it. So I'm looking at it from a panoramic view. Right now, the worst thing for the Republican Party is 45. That's the worst thing. It's also the best thing for the Democratic Party, because if an incumbent doesn't beat Biden, then nominee Trump is definitely not going to beat him. So it seems like what they're doing is they're laying the groundwork to split the Republican vote. And I don't want to give this credit to Joe Biden, but I'm serious. Like, I don't want to give it to Joe Biden, because these are the think tanks. These are the people that make people think that there is a selection. These people have. So the Washington Post reported that Donald Trump was the leading candidate for the Republican nomination. I don't believe that. I don't believe that the Conservative Party is looking to say, you know what, this guy can beat Biden or anybody else. But I know by a liberal newspaper saying that, what happens is you have 45 believing it. So now let's fast forward till we get to the convention. If DeSantis or Nikki Haley happens to win the nomination, you're going to have 45 screaming, see, it's rigged. This whole thing is rigged. Even the Democrats know I won. And that takes half of the vote away. So it's a strategic move by Biden. I don't even believe that 45 will be free come time for the election. I don't even believe he will be free, because the Republicans have got to know you do not want him showing up at the convention and saying, hey, I won. You can't, conservative, liberal, independent, libertarian, you got to know there is never a scenario where Donald Trump is going to walk across that stage and shake the Republicans nominee's hand and say, go get Joe Biden. That's never going to happen. You know this is never going to happen. So, of course, if you're a Democrat, you're pushing the narrative, oh, that Donald Trump is dangerous. We don't, he could be the next president. You do two things. You scare the Democratic vote to get out. That's number one. But number two, you immediately start planting the seed in Donald Trump's following that's saying, see, they're trying to, just like they stole the election, they're still in the nomination. That's what they're doing, bro.
Well, yeah,
that's what
you're
doing.
Yeah, I agree with you where you say we can't give Biden credit for crafting.
No. This man just gave Woman of the Year to a guy. Not his wife. Not during the celebration of women, Joe Biden gave the award to a man. So no, I'm not giving Joe Biden any credit. Joe Biden did not come up with this crafty plan, and Joe Biden is sitting there with the glasses on in the mirror saying, I'm going to Jedi mind trick. No, that didn't happen.
he is not riding out there with like a top hat and a monocle with a
No.
snake oil salesman mustache.
Snidely Whiplash. No, that's not him, bro.
He's still
That ain't
trying to
him.
figure out. He's still trying to figure out who won the big battle outside the pool between him and Corn Pop. He's
Sounds
still
about right. Sounds about right.
he's still, and and I get it, man. Like I kind of like people on my side of the fence, like on the Republican side of the fence, they kind of give me grief when I say that I legitimately feel bad for Biden because I don't think he is where he should be. Like I look at him and I kind of see my dad, and you and I, we know each other personally.
I'm offended because I know your father.
Well, you know,
I am 1,000% offended. I know your dad.
yeah, but you know what I mean when I say that. Like I
Right.
see somebody that needs help in a lot of respects, and they are not necessarily in a good position to be in charge of certain things. I you know, I
But see,
mean,
that's what I'm saying. That's what's funny because listen, that is what is so unique and also terrifying about our politics and where they are in this day and age. The same can be said about 45.
well, yeah, he's
The
getting
exact same thing.
he's getting too
Like,
old. Like
I have a lot of Democrat friends that was not afraid of the late great John McCain being president. They weren't afraid of that. They happened to vote for Obama, but they didn't feel like if McCain won, this was the end of the world. I know people that really feel like the worst president in the history of the presidency is not Nixon, is not Reagan. They believe it's 45. So I get what you're saying. I'm not a Biden supporter, but I am against 45. Like this was somebody we had to remove from office. It had to happen. And I don't believe that the conservative, just like the Democrat think tank, put this move into play. Michael Cohen's about to testify. I don't believe for 1 second that true conservatives are going to allow that man to show up at the convention and say, that's fine. I'm going to take my ball and go play down the street. They're not going to let that happen, bro.
Yeah, no,
they'll lock him up first.
Well, when you talk about true conservatives too, this is one of the things that kind of rubs me the wrong way with people who call themselves conservatives, because I think people call themselves conservative without knowing what the term means, and I think they're Republicans and not conservatives, because Trump wasn't conservative.
He's not even Republican.
Yeah, well
like he's more Democrat. If you really look at his policies, his voting history, and how he hung out with the Clintons. The only strong line stance that he's actually taken is on transgenders and things of that nature.
Yeah, and that was only semi recently. Like he was against transgenders in the military,
right?
That's not really a big deal because you had Bill Clinton. Don't ask, don't tell.
That's right.
And before Clinton, you had just no gays in the military. So I mean, Trump saying like no trans in the military, like that's hardly like anything to lose your shit over. But he was pro LGBT, and that is not a conservative thing. He was also very pro red flag law, and that is far from conservative. That's even far from Republican stances.
What about when he showed up at Liberty College? He's supposed to be Bible Belt, and he said at the podium, they said, "Mr. Trump, what is your favorite Bible verse?" He said it comes out of 2 Corinthians. 2 Corinthians? It sounds like a joke. 2 Corinthians going to a bar and Jesus shows up. Everyone knows it's 2 Corinthians. Like I've heard a man said that it was 2 Corinthians and nobody at Liberty booed him. Like he should have been booed. He should have. So 2 Corinthians show up at the church. Like that's so he's far from he's not a conservative. That's why I don't believe that the true conservatives are going to allow this man to show up and split this party. No way.
Yeah, and well, also the Republican Party, the GOP, it's kind of dealing with a similar thing that the Democratic Party is or has been dealing with for the past few years. and it is an identity crisis.
Yes.
Because the Democratic Party, it's split into about 3 or 4 different directions, give or take. You have um, standard Democrat voters that could swing, they could be swing votes possibly. You've got classical liberals, you've got neoliberals, and then you've got the leftists slash Marxists slash communists. And they are
Communist? Whoa, wait a
well,
minute.
yeah. Well, I'm saying
Wait
when
a minute. Wait a
I'm
minute. Wait a
communist,
minute.
I'm saying people that are self-proclaimed. They are holding up, the whole sickle flag and all that stuff. They're calling themselves communist.
Yeah, but
And
that's on both sides. Like that's not those voters really don't matter. Let's just be honest. You cannot and never have been able to get to the White House with just your party. So if 45 had all of the conservatives, which he got killed by Biden, so he has to be able to win independence. So these think tanks that we talk about, he has done nothing to move the needle. So there's no way you can get to the White House with just the Democrats. You can't just get to the White House with the Republicans. So you have to be able to pander to the independents. What Joe Biden has done, Joe Biden has made it clear that his presidency is about setting the Democratic Party up by pandering to the LGBTQ community and pandering to the transgender community. So no, seriously, he's losing. He's literally losing black support because of his thriving to gain the homosexual vote, because that's what he's really doing. That's they're saying, "Oh, this is our chance. The conservative party doesn't want black people. You guys come over here." That's how the black people got under the Democratic tent. Now they're doing the exact same thing with the homosexuals. Oh, the conservatives don't want you guys. Come on, get under the tent. That's what he's really doing.
Well, yeah,
and that's a real problem with some real Democrats.
Well, yeah, not even just some real Democrats, and he brought it up perfectly. And you know how I know, like, people, we speak in generalities. So when I say, like, the black vote, the white vote, or anything like that, you know what I mean. I'm not saying that everybody's monolithic,
Right?
But when it comes to foundational Black Americans, they largely are not very big into this very expansive LGBT stuff and the pandering that comes with it. And I find it to be absurd from a strategic perspective to try to entice anywhere between 1.5 and 2% of the vote at the expense of approximately 13% of the vote. I mean, the math.
Well, see, that's the. Well, see that's the again, that's the think tanks. That's the smart part of it. So what have they done is somehow the black man has become the face of homosexuality. Whether you want to take, well, I mean, you can laugh, but I'm just being honest. Whether you want to take, it started like you got RuPaul and the Drag Race, and you got Lil Nas X, and even further. I tell you this: 10 years ago, if you'd have called a homosexual a fairy, you'd have been in a fight. You'd been in a fight. But somehow Billy Porter became the fairy godmother in a Cinderella movie. So I mean, that's what I'm saying. So that what they've done is they're trying to slowly but surely push that narrative so that it's okay. Bring them into the tent. And Joe Biden is right out front. He's trying to secure Pete Buttigieg is going to have a place in our cabinet, and we got a transgender on the cabinet. You can any person that's really paying attention is seeing this for what it really is, because I don't believe that a man from Scranton is okay with homosexuals. I mean, I don't want to get in trouble on your live. I just don't believe that the man who took the train to work every day is really okay, because I don't believe that Joe Biden's okay with black people. If he was, the first order of business he should have done was overturn the crime bill that he wrote that Clinton signed.
Oh, back in
if he really cared. If he really cared. He doesn't care.
Well, yeah. Well, you and I, we shared a laugh a couple months ago when you brought up how the current administration sent a check to Africa,
$55 billion for reparations, and Sleepy Joe went to the mic and said, and I quote, "Slavery was America's first sin, and you didn't give me any of that money." You
But,
sent it
well,
to Africa.
yeah,
Okay, thanks, Stephen. Thanks, Joe.
that's like, and I know this may come off fucked up to some people. Probably foundational Black Americans who hear this who may not understand my sense of humor, but fuck, we just paid Africa twice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, well, see, that's that part right there. I mean, I don't know if that was your setup or your segue. I don't believe they paid Africa twice, because I don't believe that all the 13% of the Black population in America, I don't believe they came from Africa.
Yes, and
I believe that we're the Native Americans.
Yeah, I think that's a great segue. And by the way, I want to share Sir Gene's LOL. Sir Gene dropped us an LOL with respect to Africa being paid twice.
Of course he did. Thank you, Sir Gene.
I mean, because the fact of the matter is, like, if Black slaves were purchased from Africa, and the current administration was like, man, that was really terrible that we purchased human beings, several centuries ago. Let's give you more money for the original. Like, that's paying the pawn shop twice.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I mean, all jokes aside, that's literally what happened.
Yeah,
This is here it is. You got people in this country. Black people are still suffering from the atrocities of slavery, and Joe Biden passed right by them and paid the people they were in business with.
Yeah, could you imagine how beneficial it would have been, even if just Joe Biden went to 50 cities that were inundated with predominantly Black Americans that maybe struggling areas, and dropped $1 billion.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. That's the part that I'm so upset about, because I was meeting with my production team out here, Square Vision, and we have a meeting already set up with the senator and governor out here to discuss my economic plan as far as dishing out reparations based on the show that you and I did. If Joe Biden had taken that $55 billion and said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give Black people 4% of the oil reserve, and I'm going to allow them to have their refineries that are going to be populated and run by Black Americans here, and we'll put Black gas stations in Black neighborhoods and allow them to refine the oil, sell the gasoline, so it puts money back into the economy and also creates jobs. That would have made a whole lot more sense than writing a check to Africa saying that was their. If that's where the original sin originated, how about paying some money where the sin actually took place? Like that doesn't make sense. I tell you what, since Sir Gene is laughing at that, I'm gonna see if Sir Gene likes this joke. How about this? How about we write a check to the victims of pedophilia, and we send the check straight to the Vatican for the original sin? Forget about the little Catholic boys. How about we write a check and send that right to the Vatican? Because that would be the exact same thing. How about we just drop the check in the collection plate? How about we say we are so saddened by all of the choir boys and candlelighters who were molested by priests. So what we're going to do is we're going to write a big check and we're going to put it in the offering plate at the Vatican. How about that?
Yeah. Wait. Here's what he responded.
How about that?
And you've got some more accolades. You apparently made somebody laugh their ass off. Mr. Squiggles McJr. Has officially laughed his ass off.
Yeah.
So Mr. Squiggles McJr., I hope you are able to get your ass back.
But I mean, that's pretty much the same thing.
Well, thing. That's exactly what he said. He says the same. He said the same damn thing. It would be absolutely ridiculous.
Ridiculous. You're not gonna pay the victims. You're gonna give money to the person that victimized them. That doesn't make any sense. That makes zero sense.
Yeah, based upon like the at least what we understand from the original ledgers, from what is left from those uh, transactions, like a lot of the tribes, what do they wind up getting? They wind up getting like freaking guns and muskets
Yes.
in exchange. And
Yeah.
so what do you think they did with those when they got them? Do you think like, oh, cool guns, or do you think, damn, we're gonna round up some more people and see if we can get some more
Yeah.
guns?
I tell you what they didn't do. They didn't fight off the Brits. So whatever. My thing is it doesn't matter that Biden acknowledges it as America's first sin, because he's not acknowledging who the atrocity was perpetrated against, and that's part of the problem.
We
The
keep pissing money away to all these stupid countries, and like
Yeah,
you
I
know,
mean, like, oh, well, he funded Ukraine. Like, I mean, there's a litany of things that Joe Biden has done wrong, a litany,
yeah, but
and
this extends to other administrations, Republican
yeah,
administrations.
this country,
Yeah, we we we
absolutely,
we have like the biggest checkbook, and like I challenged some people to this notion. I asked them, I said, can you think of another country that taxes the ever loving shit out of their citizens
no,
and sends money to us?
no, 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 and if you think back, I mean, I'm probably dating myself by this. I will never forget that Oliver North never explained where that gold Cougarin came from, and how those weapons got ordered. My man just kept saying he didn't recall. So, and that was under Reagan. Like they had a bunch of gold. Like every time I think about the gold Cougarin, they had dump trucks filled with gold coins, and nobody knew how it got there. It was a big secret.
Gene wants to know if Ukraine is going to pay us reparations next year.
I should hope so. Hey, tell Gene from your phone to God's ears. I hope that is exactly what happens. I hope that Zelensky and the rest of them say, you know what? I feel so bad after watching this live that I'm going to write a check and have that sent out to Better Benefield and the breakdown. That would be great.
Oh God, this guy. Oh yeah, because we're right on the precipice of aren't we like right on the anniversary of Waco?
Yes, and that's the funny thing about Waco. So we were just talking about this today, and I want people to really understand this. So this is for anybody who thinks that they're going to topple this government. This government topples governments. It doesn't get toppled.
Yeah.
So after they told David Koresh, like, hey, man, you got to come out of there. And David was like, I'm not coming out. And they're like, well, the state troopers showed up and they're like, come out. Once you've made it a mere you situation against this country, you are going to die, because if this country saw what this country was doing, we would intervene. That's what we would do. If the United States was looking at the United States, Joe Biden would come to a podium and say, there's no way we can go. They would kill Joe Biden. They would assassinate him. Like Saddam Hussein only said, I am not accepting American dollars anymore. I only want euros. And they said, you're going to do what? And George Herbert Walker Bush said, well, I think you have weapons of mass destruction. And the next thing they showed was downtown Baghdad was on fire. So no, like, no, we're not. Maybe they should send reparations to those Marines that set Waco on fire.
Oh yeah, because Waco was such a bad situation.
It was terrible.
You're old enough to remember it.
Yeah, it was horrible.
There was reports, and it was never confirmed, but there were reports that the folks over in Waco, they had a compound where they were legally allowed to make and manufacture and sell weapons, but then a report came in that they were making illegal weapons. What those?
It was the first snowfall. This is what our government does. That's what happened. Franklin, you can sell all the dope you want, Franklin. We're gonna send the money to Nicaragua. That's what happened.
Yeah,
David Koresh, he had a license.
Yeah, and they had I think it was over. Gosh, I don't want to overestimate this, but I think it was over 70 people killed in
Yes,
Waco,
yes,
uh, including children.
yes.
And the ATF, they were like, they must have set the fires themselves. We didn't set.
Worse, after they proved that they did set the fires first, I will never forget that the ATF agent that came to the podium and said, "Well, we told them to send the children out."
And you had folks posing for pictures in the
Yeah.
smolder over that. It's like, why are you proud about that? Like, why are you proud? Like, you killed a bunch of kids?
Listen, let me tell you something. So that's what our country does. Uh, White people will say, "You guys need to forget about slavery. It happened over 400 years ago. You need to get over slavery." And out of the same mouth, they will turn around and tell you, "Never forget 9/11." But if you tell them, then what we should do, like you guys have done in the South, by raising all of these statues of Confederate generals, how about we put a statue in New York City and put the Osama bin Laden School of Aviation? How about that? Let's never forget. Let's have the Osama bin Laden, yeah, the School of Aviation. No,
Like, can I get 1980s Osama, or do we got to do 90s? Which one we doing?
let's use the Family Guy one. Let's use the Family Guy Osama with the chicken. Let's put him downtown. Let's have a couple of little planes. Let's put one of those little mobiles with airplanes on it, so we'll never forget.
Well, I just think at this point, like, it seems like anybody and everybody can well, there are legitimately bad people that we should not be naming shit after. And then there are people who lived in, let's say, complicated times. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like, but
but come on, Gregory.
oh no, I'm not talking about Osama bin Laden or any shit like that. But I'm saying at this point, to be truly American, we should just name schools after ad icons. I want the Grimace School of Medicine.
Grimace.
I
Well,
want Mayor McCheese in charge of the
what
fucking DMV.
like what I'm waiting for Germany to have the Adolf Hitler School of Dance or the Goebbels Science Institute. Because if you bring up anything associated with Nazis in Germany, it is punishable by 10 years in prison. They don't want to hear about it. They don't want to talk about it. And they don't want you talking about it. So I don't like I'm telling you, if our country saw our country's behavior, they would Captain Crunch. Yes, yes, yes,
we need a
yes.
Catholic School of Medicine.
Listen, Captain Crunch, the whole Sesame Street cast. You can go from Oscar to Grouch, and what you should do is when you name that school, that should be the school mascot. So you should have Captain Crunch on the side of the helmets. You should have Grimace. That school should be purple and white, and they have a little Grimace. You should go all the way out to make it fair, fun, and a learning institute. Did you see that thing I sent you about the little boy who's librarian?
God,
Can we talk about? Well, maybe we shouldn't talk about that. We'll just keep that between us. That was.
we can say that for another, because I wanted you to touch on that, because it amazes me. We've been on here for almost a little over 30 minutes. I want you to dive into what we discussed earlier, which is,
oh, okay.
You have questions about the validity or the, for lack of a better term, validity of whether or not any foundational Black American is legitimately
A descendant of a slave from Africa.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let me tell you what prompted this. So two things. My wife and I did the 23 and DNA test. This and that. We found a bunch of family members that have done the same thing. Our family tree is filling out. The one thing that keeps coming up is that my last name, Benefield, is French. And we have descendants from France. We even have Benefields that are white that are our family members. What we do not have is slaves. And my question has always been, no, my
You're getting you got somebody asking, "Are you a hotep?"
no, no, not even close. We've had a lot of people that keep saying fourth, fifth, sixth generation, and they're from this country, and their family does not have any African ties, does not speak another language, and doesn't have an accent. And the way the story was told to us is like you just said, Joe Biden. They went and grabbed a bunch of Africans from smaller tribes that had been conquered and brought them to this country, and they became slaves. That story does not sound right to me, because the first story told was Christopher Columbus, who was looking for India, found America, named the natives that he saw here Indians, and there were no black people here. And then he said, you know what? Let's go to Africa and bring slaves here. And we don't speak the language, they don't speak our language, and we're going to teach them how to sharecrop. So how is it possible that every black person in this country ancestors came here on a boat when I believe that we were already here?
Do you think therein lies the possibility that two things could be true at the same time, insofar as that perhaps some people were brought from Africa and some people were already here? Do
No,
you
see,
think?
I don't doubt slavery. I know, and I don't want to sound like an idiot, but I know slavery happened. And I know that there was a slave trade. I know that was real. But my thing is, so when a person hires somebody to do a job, it means one, either they can't do it, or two, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I believe that the black people, yeah, well, either either you don't know how to do it, or you don't want to do it.
Yeah.
Even after white people could not have slaves to get free labor to be sharecroppers, they were willing to die for that. They were willing to die. A lot of people died for that. And when that didn't work, they opened up prisons so they could still make black people work for free. Could it
Yeah,
be
and
possible? Well, the first prison camps were open right after Juneteenth. Like Billy the Kid didn't face prison. Like, they didn't have a prison, but we had black cowboys. They would have been
well, yeah,
slaves.
and what I find interesting is, like, slavery is a concept, or is a practice that's been around for it's not even hundreds of years, it's thousands of
Right,
years.
1,000 years.
And obviously the trade had to have been going around the globe for those thousands of years, a whole lot of
Absolutely.
swapping hands. And this one desolate area, the Americas, are you opining that maybe it's like, with all that going on for thousands of years, there happens to be one area of the world where it's like, oh man, there's just like these one colored people. We'll call them Indians, but no blacks here, no fair skinned people, you know, just these
That doesn't sound right.
redskins.
That doesn't
Yeah,
listen.
it does
That
not.
doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. So if we're just looking through history the way we were taught, the Pilgrims couldn't kill the Indians, so the Pilgrims got help from the Buffalo Soldiers to kill the natives, right? How
Yeah.
is it that a weaker race of people was enslaved, but they needed them to kill a stronger race of people? That doesn't sound right.
Well,
Doesn't make
also
any
at the same.
sense. What?
Well,
Well,
also, if you know
okay.
the story goes, when it comes to the natives, they couldn't even handle blankets. I'm sorry, I know that's going to offend some people.
Well, maybe we should give Walmart and all the blanket makers reparations. Maybe we should do that. That was an atrocity. Maybe we should pay
Yeah,
the blanket makers.
I know this is going
But
to be.
so let me ask you this. The city of Memphis, in Memphis, Tennessee, has 3 pyramids. One of the pyramids is one of the largest pyramids in the world. Are you telling me that the slave masters, the oppressor, allowed the oppressed to build monuments that reminded them of home? Because Memphis, the city, is named after the city of Memphis in Egypt. How could that be possible? if we weren't already here. My contention is this: we were already here. The Africans that were here are the natives, and because of the ability to share crop and all those things, the colonizers attacked them and seized the land. This goes back to Field Order 15. This is the land that Lincoln gave back. I don't believe the reparations was, we're going to give you the land. I believe the reparations was returning what they stole. So when the colonizers saw how good they were with the land, they went to Africa to get more Africans. That part I do believe. But let me ask you this. 6 months on a boat to Africa, 6 months back. How could it be possible that this dude who got picked up in Africa, chained to the bottom of a boat for 6 months back, barely ate, and when he gets on the block to be sold, he looks like John Coffey? How could that be possible, bro? How?
Yeah, no, that's well, you are a father. All right, so you probably understand this. You've been in car trips with children.
Yes.
And you've probably been in car trips where it's, 4 or 5 hours.
Right.
And I would imagine that there have been times where you're like, I don't even want to feed this freaking kid. And that's
exactly. Exactly. So you're telling me 6, and mind you now, the colonizers have to take 6 months worth of rations there and 6 months back. How did they teach people who didn't speak the language how to pick cotton?
So Gene brings up something, and I think it's a fair thing. He's saying that he knows way too many Native Americans to be buying this dude, but I think he may be misinterpreting what you might be saying, insofar that you're not necessarily denying the existence of Native Americans. You're suggesting the possibility that by the time Europeans landed here, there may have been already, for lack of a better term.
Well, I mean, because Gene. Well, I want to address that, because I think Gene's missing my point. We all have heard the story that Columbus was looking for India. He didn't find India. He found America. I don't know how you found something that was already here, but he found America. He then named the people he saw Indians because he thought he was in India. How could it be possible that there were no Africans here, and then somebody said, I know we can get some slaves, let's go to Africa? That does not make sense. And then you go get them to tend to your fields here when they've never done that. That seems odd, man.
Yeah.
Something is missing in that story.
Yeah, I think therein lies the possibility, and that's why I like folks opening up these type of discussions, these type of dialogues, because it gets people's brains turning, gets the gears turning, because you're not out here saying like, oh, slavery didn't happen, nobody was bought from Africa. Like, you're not.
No, that's stupid. We know it happened.
You're suggesting the possibility that when America was happened upon, for whatever reason it may have been, maybe it could have been prior slave trades, maybe it could have been any number of things, because we're talking about thousands and thousands and thousands of years of history. You're saying that there's a possibility when America was first graced upon by Columbus and the gang, that it was far more integrated than what we have been led to believe currently, which I do not think that is a far-fetched idea. I don't
either.
Yeah.
I just, the way the story is told to us, there are Native Americans here, and then the Pilgrims show up. And then someone said, go get the Africans. And then when the Native Americans would not go to the reservation, they said, oh, I know who can kill them. We'll use the Africans. That does not make sense, bro. Because you're saying that the weaker race of people who you enslaved had to push the stronger race of people to the reservation for you. That's why we have the Buffalo Soldiers. That doesn't make sense. If the natives were so strong or so weak, why on earth did you need the black people to kill them?
Yeah, no, and even though Squiggles has a funny name, Squiggles McJr. I fucking love that name. He goes, it is interesting, similar to how the Chinese also were in communication with ancient Mexico and Peru.
Facts.
Yeah,
That's a fact.
And that's the thing, and I will say, admittedly, Gene is a good cohort of mine. He's saying no proof of anyone from Africa in America before, but the problem is,
Then ask Gene. Then ask Gene. How is it that the city of Memphis has pyramids in it, and the city is named after an African city?
well, it's not even that. It's like when you look in the water and you look at you're standing in front of a lake and you don't see any fish in the lake, and you can say there's no proof of fish being in this spot in the lake. I mean, therein lies the possibility that portions of this earth were more integrated, racially diverse, whatever you want to call it, than we were led to believe. And I think that is a fair thing. I think that is a fair thing to opine upon, to explore, and it's when we say like there's no proof for this and no proof for that, it's really hard to say, well, what is proof? Like, how do you prove a negative? Like in saying that, oh, there was no black person in North America prior to slavery. That's a tough thing to prove because you're asking to prove a negative. Um, I think there is wiggle room with the theory. I think it's a fair theory. You know what I mean?
I know that there's actually documentation that says in this country that Native Americans were referred to as Negroes. Like that's a fact. That's something that can be proven. That Native Americans were in Tallahassee, Florida. There's a tribe that is being sued because of things of this nature and the lineage of coming from Africa. So I don't understand why somebody will believe that 13% of the United States population right now all came over here on a boat from Africa and was enslaved. That doesn't make sense. That doesn't make sense at all.
Yeah, and when you think about enslavement, I mean, enslavement is that's an intense process.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, that's what I'm telling you. So if you just do the math, they would have to have taken a year's worth of food to bring them back and then teach them how to do something they never done. Who was tending the fields for the year before they got there? Who was doing it?
Yeah, no, that's another thing that I find interesting is the fact that foundational Black Americans, when they were first brought or first purportedly brought to the country, they learned and inherited all these very unique skills that were very specific to the terrain and the climate, ones that wouldn't necessarily fare well in Africa, as far as I know. I mean,
ask Gene this: how is it that you can date back if you take an Italian or a Mexican and you date their family back 4 generations, you will find an accent or them speaking another language? Why is it possible? How could it be possible that when it comes to Black people, 4 generations back, they only speak English?
Yeah,
there's no African dialect. There are no African words passed down. They only speak English.
Yeah, and that was something you and I discussed earlier prior to the stream. That was another thing that got my brain turning, because that is something you see. Like you go up to the New England area, you go to places like Boston, and Boston has its own freaking accent. Based upon the hodgepodge of the Irish and the Italian that have resided up there, and they have that kind of weird blended accent, but it still exists.
It still exists.
To this day.
Your car, go park the car.
And you and I discussed also how when it comes to Hispanic families, that could be 4 generations deep here in the United States. They could very well be speaking Spanish in the household, and they'll speak ostensibly English outside of the house, but they'll speak Spanish inside the household. They'll have that full blown accent, so on and so forth. And yeah, And I know the excuse that is always brought out is like, oh well, the foundational Black Americans, they had it beaten out of them. They
You
were
know what's
just
so funny that you say that? Because any person that's seen Roots, especially a black person seeing Roots,
Kunta Kinte.
the Kunta Kinte. So what you're telling me is, because both things can't be true. Kunta Kinte refused to refer to himself as Toby. He was only Kunta Kinte. How is it possible that not one person has passed down any African tradition or words, something small? Like if you tell me something small like Baba, Baba means father, or Undugu, that means brother. How could we have not passed down one word? Because some of us are old enough to have great grandparents that would have been slaves, but they only spoke English, man. They only spoke English.
And if I had to fathom a guess, and I know this is going to sound fucked up, I'm guessing you learned those words, the ones you mentioned earlier.
Grown.
Yeah.
Right, through research.
Yeah. You found it, what, online, I'm guessing? You know?
No. So once we did the whole DNA test and found out where we were from, I started doing a whole lot of studying, and I started trying to figure out, like, okay, what this is and what that was. And I got really, really interested. Like, I'll give you something that's very small. You already know how, like, my love for chess is. So I was trying to figure out where chess originated. And people kept saying that chess was from China and chess from India. And then I found out that chess originated in West Africa. That's why no matter what pieces you get, the white pieces attack the black pieces, because it is the story of the invasion of the Brits into Africa. The name of the game is Hashamata. And in Swahili, that means the king is dead. How could it be possible that generational, not just me, I don't know any other black people, old black people, that have stories that date back to Africa, but I do know black people that have stories that date back to slavery. That doesn't make sense to me. That does not make sense to me. And if Gene can explain that, if he can explain how a fifth generation black person, like the lady who just passed away, she was 132 years old. So her grandmother would have definitely been a slave. She only speaks English.
Yeah.
She only speaks English.
Yeah. And that's I think that is a fair question, because you look at the example of Kunta Kinte Tobe. Oh, they beat the language out of them, they beat the name out of them. And you have folks saying, well, slaves first hit the shore in 1619 or something like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so the assumption is like, oh, you can eradicate a language in that amount of time. And can you? Sure. I mean, you can, I guess. But you don't see a lot of that happening elsewhere, considering you have living languages, amongst.
So let me tell you why I don't believe that you could beat the language out, because you still pass down traditions. When our ancestors couldn't get married, they would jump the broom. So jumping the broom was passed down from slavery. My wife and I, when we got married, we had a ceremonial broom. We jumped the broom. That was passed down because they couldn't go out and get married. How could tradition like that be passed down, but not one word?
Yeah.
That doesn't make sense to me, man. And I'm not saying I have the answers. I'm only saying that the way it is taught to us and what we've been told does not sound right. Something is definitely missing.
Oh yeah, no, I and that's why I freaking love folks that push back and say, I don't believe everything that we're being told.
No,
and
I do not.
I think we get more answers by, even if people think folks are nutty or crazy or off the wall or whatever, because I've been called nutty and crazy before. And
I've been called a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I've entertained all sorts of people. I've entertained people who think the earth is flat. I don't care. I like people that will say, I don't believe everything that we're getting spoon-fed, because we are getting spoon-fed the crap.
Well, hold on to your hat, because I got something that's probably going to blow your hat right off, and Gene might log off after this. I don't believe them telling me about my heritage and where I came from, because they have clearly lied and told me Jesus was a skinny little white guy with blue eyes and blonde hair, and I don't believe that. So if they lied on Jesus, they shouldn't have lied on Kunta Kinte. So I'm gonna just leave it at that.
Yeah, I know. And that's the thing, because you're old enough to remember when Roots was a miniseries.
Yeah, we had to watch it in school growing up. You used to have Roots was a
mandatory thing,
mandatory requirement.
Yeah,
like this was something mandatory, and it wasn't just for the black schools. It was through school. Like this was in fifth grade. You had to actually write a paper on it. Like this was not just, and the California Achievement Test was right behind it. So you wrote the paper, and a lot of people would use their paper on Roots to be the essay portion on the California Achievement Test. That was real. So if Alex Haley is telling the truth about Kunta Kinte and his desire to keep his African heritage, how come nobody speaks it? How come nobody tells us anything? And why is it things like recipes, jumping the broom, superstitions, all those things got passed down, but not one. And every inventor in this country, they haven't invented anything African related. From the stoplight to peanut butter, they didn't invent anything that would be used in Africa. How could that be possible? And that doesn't mean, and I want to be clear on this, because I don't want people coming for me on the live. I know slavery was real. I know the Atlantic slave trade was real. I know that slaves were sold into slavery. I also know that African nations captured smaller tribes and sold them for guns and wine and spices. I know that to be the truth. What I am challenging is every black person is not a descendant of a slave that came from Africa, because some of us were already in the United States.
Yeah, I think that is I think it's a fair thing to explore. Because also, like, we have to keep in mind, folks can say like, hey, there was no proof. Like, we did not, in terms of a worldwide consensus, have a good census of, the who's here.
Right.
Like, have you ever heard of a census in 1611?
No. No, absolutely not. 1619, the first. So you're telling me 1619 they touched down and taught a few slaves how to pick cotton, and then when they got more and said, you teach them how to do the same thing, and we're going to keep this thing rolling. That doesn't sound right, bro.
Yeah.
And then even after they freed the slaves, because they were so much better at sharecropping than anybody else, a lot of black people went back to their masters and said, I will keep doing this job as long as you pay me. Now, that's how we got the term sharecropping. That's how that happened. So it doesn't make sense that we weren't here, because we understood what to do when we were here, not when we got here.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. If you scooped me up out of nowhere, and like today, if you scoop me up, there are some things I know how to do, some things I don't know. If you told me like, hey, Greg, we're about to plant some vegetables, I'd be like, come again?
Right. Or say it like this. Let's say the entire Benefield family and entire Hoyt family was snatched up from the United States and taken to Indonesia. Do you think because we were in Indonesia that we would stop talking to ourselves?
Yeah, Squiggles is bringing up an interesting point, because there were black individuals in Europe prior to the what do you call it, the discovery of America. Right. So he's proposing like, hey, maybe some came with Europeans as free people. And
listen, Squiggles is 1,000% right. I told you, we did our DNA. Our family came here from Europe because our name is French.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have all those people in Louisiana that speak French. Like, no, Squiggles is 1,000% right. But that does not negate the fact that they were already here.
Yeah.
That doesn't negate that.
Yeah, I'm right on board with you, and I know probably my buddy Gene and maybe even Squiggles too, and whomever else is viewing, because there's a few other viewers. I know I might get some pushback, but I tend to agree with you insofar that there is a strong likelihood that foundational Black Americans were more foundational than we purport them to be, insofar as like, oh, they all just came from Africa, we fucking imported.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You the way you keep a person oppressed is by showing them they were oppressed. If you tell them that, hey, listen, some of you guys were already here and you guys contributed like this, some of you guys built that, somebody built the third largest pyramid in Memphis, Tennessee, that's on the shores of Mississippi. Somebody built that. And I have a hard time believing that the kidnapper allowed the kidnapped to decorate their room. I don't believe that.
Yeah, no,
Doesn't sound right.
I mean, hell, if I get a new girlfriend or anything like that, I don't even want them decorating the living room.
Facts. That's a fact. That's a fact. Like I'm just being real. It doesn't sound right.
Golly.
Doesn't sound right.
Listen, I will tell you this. All right, while you may get some pushback on your position, your notion, and your, I call it a good faith question. You have a good faith question about the history of this country and foundational Black Americans. That's good. It's a good faith question. It doesn't come from a place of anger or malice,
No.
And I don't think you're going to get, I don't think you're going to deal with like a terrible amount of pushback. You will probably get like, some angry, and I'll be candid, it's probably not going to be white folks that are going to be like angry at you for this. It's probably going to be more Black folks.
Oh, you should go to my post.
Nah.
This started yesterday. You should go to my post, because I've had people literally telling me and making it sound like I'm asinine, uneducated, or unintelligent, and saying that they beat the African out of my ancestors. And then in the same breath, they say you should check your DNA history. And my DNA history said that the Benefield men were never slaves.
Well, yeah, that's what I find unique is you could convince a person, such as those people in your comment section, you could convince them that the African language, that their respective dialects were beaten out of their ancestors. But for some reason, and by some miracle, you have people today, Black Americans today, who will believe the language was beaten out of them. But the offense over a word, the infamous N-bomb with the hard R, they can still carry that offense. So they can be offended generationally over a word. They were just told, like, hey, be offended by this word.
Well, see, I can explain that to you, because I've done a little research on the N-word. So the N-word, the term, was first used throughout slavery because it meant a lazy slave. So it was actually used against white people. It was used against Black people, this, that, and other. It was used because people would say, hey, that N-word, letting the slave master or the people buying the slave say, hey, that guy won't work. That guy won't work. But when you ask yourself, how did Black people here get the name negro? That's the Spanish word for Black. So how did that happen?
Well, yeah, the hard R version of the word, that it's got a very confusing history, because it's one of those things where you try to get a concrete, like, who came up with the word. Why?
Yeah, see, I don't see.
Yeah.
I'm one of those people that, like, I can't tell a man how to talk.
Yeah,
I can only tell how you talk to me. And whether you're Black, brown, or indifferent, you're not going to call me that. That's what you're not going to do.
Yeah,
because I take it as full disrespect. You're not going to call me that. And you can't tell me, like, when I say Hoyt is my brother with an ER, or my brother with an A, that's a term of endearment, and you cannot turn it into anything else. So you're not going to tell me by changing the ending of that word that now it's a term of endearment, because I don't see it that way. It's never going to be like that with me. So you're never going to, so you don't have to worry about Black people asking if a white person said, I can't tell you how to talk. I can only tell you to talk to me. You're not going to call me that.
Yeah,
but,
yeah. I used to be one of those people where I used to be like, oh, you shouldn't hit people over words and stuff like that if they offend you and stuff like that. And like I kind of look back on that. I'm like, no, it's like if somebody says some shit that pisses me off, I don't care if I'm dealing with one of those conservatives that are like, oh, you shouldn't hit people of words. Like if you say some fucked up stuff to me, yeah, I don't care if it's illegal. I'm probably gonna smack you. Like
You know what? You know what's funny about that word? And this goes back to Gene. The N word can only be said in English. You can't say it in Spanish. You can't say it in Italian. You can't say it in German. You can only say it in English. So how could a word that can only offend people in English be used on Africans?
Yeah. Well, no, but what I was getting at too earlier is even though you think you might rub some people the wrong way with your theories, and once again, your theory is in good faith. You're not doing it to piss anybody off.
Mm.
You've got questions, legitimate questions, and I've got questions about other things. What I can say is your theory will not rub as many people the wrong way as when I start asking questions about whether it was really 6 million.
See? Okay. So
and we can leave it at that because I got to keep this YouTube friendly. There's a lot of things.
okay, yeah, because I was about to say, I'll talk to you. I'll talk to you after this because I got a whole different thing on that. Because if the white Jews was put in Auschwitz, who was he putting in those ovens?
You gotta. We say the word orange juice.
Okay. Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Hey,
We'll talk about that later.
Thank you for everybody that tuned in, participated, and once again, like I said at the onset of the live stream, if you're offended, that's okay. It's okay to be offended, to be uncomfortable, and to disagree with either myself, whomever I feature on here, because that sparks.
I believe it. Well, I believe if they're offended, they should send us reparations. That's what I think. If we offended somebody, send us reparations.
At least G knew what I was. See, when I brought the 6M, he's like,
no. I gotta go because I'm gonna put this on my YouTube channel. Thank you, Sir Gene. No, sir. You don't give me Kanye West. No.
Yes, that's you gotta watch out for that one word. That's the one word you can't say.
Yeah. Well, you don't give me Kanye. Hey, listen, as always, brother, I appreciate the opportunity to sit down and have real discussions with you because I know that when we do have a discussion, it's coming from a place of trying to get a concrete answer and to push information and knowledge forward. It's never with any malice. It's never to, if it does offend somebody, that's never the intent. It really is just having a conversation and a discussion to move people forward and give people something to think about and something to talk about. And I appreciate it.
Yeah. Give them something. Think before you sleep, man. That's all it's about.
Absolutely.
And thank you all again. Casey, you have a good evening.
You too, bro. Be safe.
All right, y'all take care. Have a great evening.